Hello everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful day. In this video, we will learn about the overtones, scale degrees, and the scale degree names. So first, let's start with the overtones. So let's suppose I hit a C1 at the bottom of the piano. What do you think we are hearing? You might think it's only one frequency or one note, because indeed you're playing C1 and it represents one main frequency. But musical instruments are not pure frequencies. In fact, if you break down any note from a musical instrument, it will split into multiple frequencies. And this is how you can tell apart the sound of a piano, violin, guitar, clarinet, and so on. This is because the sound they generate is a rich mix of many frequencies, and they're generated by vibrating the string, the air, or the whatever material it is made from, depending on the instrument type. So these frequencies are natural vibrations which resonate with that note that you play, which we call the fundamental, and those frequencies are called the overtones. And so if we play the C1, this is a chart that maps the first 16 overtones of C1. You can see here that there's 16 of them right here. And of course, here I'm showing the frequency of each of the notes. There's more than 16. It goes on and on and on, but the level of intensity of each overtone goes down the farther you go. So the most prominent ones are the ones closer to the fundamental. Okay, and so when you see here when I'm playing C1, you see the overtones. C1 at 32.7 hertz, C2 at 65.4 hertz, G2, and so on, and you can see the frequencies of each one of them. Again, the ones that are closer to the fundamental are the ones that we hear the most. And so if you think about it, in a piano note, when you're playing a C1, you're hearing many other notes. But it's not limited to C1. Any note that you play on the piano or another instrument, you hear, of course, mainly the frequency of that note, but you will be hearing also other frequencies together with it. And so when we're playing a C1, I'm mapping out here the notes, the first notes that we can hear. So what do we hear? C1, C2, which is an octave higher, G2, which is a perfect fifth after the C2, C3, which is another octave from the previous C, E3, then G3, you see some of them repeat, then B flat 3, then C4, again with the Cs, and now we have D4, E4, so that's another E, F sharp 4, G4, A flat 4, now you can see the different notes are playing out, B flat 4, B4, C5, and then it continues after that, basically. So these are the main ones. So what this means exactly is every time you play a C1 on the piano, all those notes that you see here, they are part of the sound that you hear. All of them. Of course, the farther you go, the less perceptible they are. Pretty much your ear will recognize the first part here, but you will still hear a little bit of each one of them. So next time you listen to a piano, listen very carefully and very closely and try to identify, can you hear the other frequencies that are being played there? Of course, this applies to any other note. Whichever note you play, it will have its own series of overtones. It's just pure physics. Any note. Even more, here we're playing individual notes. Imagine you're playing chords. Each note within this chord has its own series of overtones. And so you can see already how complex and rich the harmonies they can build up, and the secondary and the third and the fourth and all those harmonies piling up on top of each other. So from those 16 overtones of C1, if we look at the C major scale, we can count how many times we see which note. And so the C was 5 times, which makes perfect sense because it's an octave of itself, basically. So within 16 notes, we saw C 5 times. Then it's followed by G. which is a scale degree 5. And you remember that's a perfect fifth distance between C and G, right? Then it's followed by E, and it's followed also by B flat or A sharp. 2 times each one of them. So those ones. Oh, they sound nice together. That's strange. Just looking at the scale of the C major scale, of course, 3 of those are in the scale. So C, E, G, but the B flat is not. But that's a different topic for another time. So those 3 notes, C, E, G, play an important role basically in the C major scale. And not just those 3, every note in the scale plays an important role. And you notice that the scale degrees, they're not all similar. Each one has a kind of a function within the scale. These here are the names of those functions. The first one is the tonic, followed by the supertonic, then mediant, subdominant, and then the scale degree 5 is the dominant. And so this is the perfect fifth that we talked about before. Then submediant, and the scale degree 7 is the leading tone because it's leading towards the tonic again. Now, for representation, I'm using here the C major scale. Any major scale has the same kind of scale degree names. So looking more closely, those 3 notes that we saw that are very present in the overtones, C, G, and E, these are the most stable in the scale or in the key as well. So the tonic is usually the most stable, followed by the dominant, and then followed by the mediant. And I colored here the scale degrees basically in blue color. And if there are 3 that are stable, it means that there are unstable notes. The unstable notes, they have a tendency to want to resolve towards a stable note. In this case, we have the supertonic, which is scale degree 2. If we calibrate just our ears to the scale, and so from scale degree 2, supertonic wants to resolve towards down to the tonic. The subdominant, which is scale degree 4, it wants to resolve to the mediant. And if you want to memorize those 4, just think of happy birthday. You see, every time there's a resolution, like it satisfies the ear, the anticipation in the ear. That's what the resolution is. You have a little bit of ambiguity and then clarity after that. The scale degree 6, the submediant, it resolves to the dominant. And the leading tone, so you see, it's so unstable. It just wants to move towards the tonic. Now you have the resolution. And so with the stable ones, you can just stay as long as you want. I can stay here as long as I want. I don't feel like the need to want to resolve. Same. But if I'm here, for example, yeah, it wants to move. So think about stability and instability like a ball on a hill or versus a ball at the bottom of a valley. A stable situation is a ball at the bottom of the valley doesn't move anywhere. It's at rest, it's comfortable where it is at home. So it's at rest, you could stay there as long as you want. And then, of course, with music, things move on, you can do other things and then come back, but you always want to come back to those stable notes. That's at least what the ear tendency is. The unstable notes are like a ball on the top of a hill. It cannot stay there for too long. It needs to move. It needs to go down to a more stable situation. The same principle applies to any key and any major scale. This is an example of the key of A with the A major. Okay, so the tonic is A. The supertonic is B, wants to resolve to A. The mediant is C sharp. The subdominant is D, wants to resolve to the mediant. The dominant is E, so that's the perfect fifth with the A. The submediant is the F sharp, wants to resolve to the dominant. And the leading tone is the G sharp, wants to resolve to the A. Just notice here I was using hashtags and not the actual sharp signs, but typically it's a lot easier to just type a hashtag. Another example, the key of D flat and D flat major scale. Again, tonic, supertonic wants to resolve, subdominant wants to resolve to F, dominant, submediant wants to resolve to the dominant, leading tone, and then tonic. And what you will find here is, while in the C major scale, the C note is the tonic, is the most stable, doesn't matter where you play it. You see, it's super stable there. In the key of D flat, so in D flat major, the C is the leading tone, is the most unstable in the scale. You see, it wants to resolve to D flat. And so there is no absolute here. There is no that C is always this or D flat is always that. It's all depending on which scale and which key you are at. And in that case, in the D flat, C is the most unstable note in the scale. I talked that some are more stable than others from the 3 stable ones, but also from the unstable ones, you have some more unstable than others. The leading tone is by far the most unstable, followed by the subdominant, followed by the supertonic, and followed by the submediant. See, it's a soft resolution here. And here I map out from the most stable to the most unstable. I use like cold, wintry, calm atmosphere for the stable ones because there's less movement. And the unstable ones, basically the more fiery ones, the more dynamic, the more unsettled. And the order is tonic, scale degree 1, then scale degree 5 dominant, scale degree 3 mediant, and then we move on stable, scale degree 6 submediant, supertonic scale degree 2, subdominant scale degree 4, and leading tone scale degree 7. Of course, all those are within the scale. If you go outside of the scale while you're still in the same key, of course, you have much more instability there, but then you are a little bit in a new territory, and that's a topic for a completely different time. But one thing I want to highlight here is that there is no good notes and bad notes when it comes to scale or even music in general. To make good music, you need to rely on both. If you just play stable notes, then it's very boring. You're not really getting any progression that is happening or something interesting that is building up in the music. Consider music as a kind of a story. And if you do also only unstable notes, it's a little bit unpredictable. So what you need is a good contrast, a good build up and release, tension and release, question and answer, ambiguity and clarity. And you need this kind of mix to make beautiful music. You see, music is not just science. There is a science part of it. Of course, we saw the overtones, the frequencies, how they resonate with each other and all that stuff. But definitely there is a social aspect to it. It's an art. You need to move the interest of the ear that is listening, whether it's by interesting thoughts or emotions or idea. And so at the same time, we're using art and science to convey music. And so this is what makes music so rich and diverse and open for so much potential, is all these dynamics that you can create through tension and release and contrast that you can build up. That's why context matters a lot. You can't just fit music into a mathematical formula. Stability and instability can also depend on how you're playing, on what are the chords being played, on what is the harmonies being built up, and so on. So I can give you an example. For example, in the C major scale again, okay, so the scale degree 4, we said it wants to resolve down to the mediant, right? That's its natural resolution. But if you're playing a pattern of going up, yeah, you might want to go down. Okay, that's a good resolution. But the ear has a tendency to anticipate that you're still going up, that you want to resolve actually up. And so here the context is there's a moving melody, and the ear, the brain is trying to analyze what's coming next. And so the tendency is also contextual. There is an absolute tendency if you just isolate the notes, but then there's a contextual tendency where the ear, the brain is trying to recognize patterns and build up some form of anticipation, basically, with those patterns. If you want to make your life easier, you can make a table like this. In this case, I make an example on the C major scale. I should start using other keys and scales in the examples because you should not get too fixated on the C major, and it's just good practice to rely on different keys and scales. So what I map out here is the note name, then the scale degree, then the scale degree name, and then the tendency. Those that are stable, I just put stable, and those that have a tendency to go towards another note, I put which is the other note. So supertonic has tendency to go to tonic, subdominant to mediant, submediant to dominant, and leading tone to tonic. Those that have higher tendency, I put more arrows, and those that have less tendency, I put less arrows. This is why also the circle of fifth has a strong link between the different keys. It is because the dominant and the tonic have the most stable position and link to each other. That's the thing about music. Everything is interconnected in one way or another. And here what you see, just if you remember, so if you start from a C, imagine it's a tonic of C major. Well, G is the dominant of the C. D is the dominant of the G. A is the dominant of the D. E is the dominant of the A, and so on. And you see this loops back all the way back to C, and you see how the relation between the tonic and the dominant is the foundation for the diatonic Western music. This will play an even more important role later on when we start to look at harmonies and harmonic progressions and relations. Just keep in mind that music is highly contextual. There's a lot of science into it, but also what the ear accepts as consonant or dissonant is something that is very social and it's not static through time. So even if you go back centuries, what they used to play at the time, what they used to accept to hear as consonant or like nice sounding sounds changed over time. More and more has been included into what should be acceptable, and even more dissonant sounds start to be more introduced. And now we hear a lot of them and we believe they're pretty normal, but at the time they were considered quite dissonant. Consider also the difference between cultures, so Oriental, Western, North, South, whatever. Taste matters a lot in what is acceptable for the ear in terms of anticipation, in terms of how the harmonies should work, and so on. So yes, science plays a major role, but art plays even a bigger role because at the end of the day, music is an art form. It's a form of expression. It's a form of conveying message, feeling, ideas, and so on. And that's the extreme beauty of it. And so that's it for now. If you have any question, go ahead and write it in the comment section. I will make sure to answer as soon as I can. If you enjoyed this lesson, please subscribe. I'm trying to reach 100 subscribers. I'll try to be posting 2 lessons per week to help you in your learning journey. And I wish you a fantastic musical day.